into this. So if I think about me, when I first had an opening, I think I was 16. The idea that I could talk about it or know what it was to some extent, or share about it, or is ridiculous. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it. And but it was, I would say that whatever it was that happened to me is the same. It's the same whether it happened when openings I had later on or now. It's the same. So there's this thing that's the same, but there's this thing that's different, and the relative side of it is different, and that's the maturity side of it. That's where this experience of absolute is received, and that side of it, the question is, what does that do with it? And I would say, if you're more mature, if you're immature, I suppose the first example you can say is, then it means, in a way, you've got a lot of stuff with your personality. You're not very aware of it. Therefore, this experience of beyond personality is taken by that, and for all the needs of that personality, it's used. Oh, here's a way I can be superior. Here's a way I can, make money. Here's a way I can, all these things that you can get from it. So I think that's a very obvious example of how maturity feeds into this. Now, when I was thinking this through, I was thinking, yeah, but you don't have to be young to not have that. But there are people who are old and clever and have obviously had experiences, but yet their personality is still feeding into and using this in some ways, so maybe it's more subtle or refined, but I think that's still going on. So I don't think it's just that. So there's something about, life experience that creates this ground, like even on the level of when you're young and stupid, as they say, the phrase young and stupid, you feel like you can feel like you're kind of bullish. You can own the world. You can think you're brilliant at something because you haven't had any hard knocks that produce the opposite, that deepen your navigation and your feeling of dealing with life. So, just the thing of growing up and having some hard knocks in your life, even just on that level, deepens you in a way, because it takes off these kind of edges whereby you might be very big-headed about something where you don't really know how the world works, and you might think, I'm the best mathematician, or I'm the best this, I'm so good at this, and your ego might be pumped up with it. And you go to a college, and in the real world, you realize, no, you're about the 10th best in the class or something. Just, it's a very silly example, but you get the point. Life has a way of like minimizing that kind of childlike bullishness almost, Yeah, so I think in a way it comes down to what is the context in which the experience lands, and how well can it be used. And I guess what I would say is, if it's well used because of the maturity, it will naturally grow into the shift, or could do at least, because all the things that would snag it and pull you back into personality aren't so strong, and the awareness is high enough to catch those things. So that's my initial thoughts. So it's open for discussion.
When I'm listening to you, I ask myself, is maturity a matter of age, or is maturity a matter of experiences and having the ability and the possibility to inquire into the experiences? I'm just thinking about the girl which was at my office now a few hours before, 2 hours before. She's 11. She said to me, when she said goodbye, she said, now I'm 11 and I'm more mature. And that's so fine. But she noticed something which I was sitting there and I was thinking, wow, how an 11-year-old can talk about herself. But she already went in her life to such difficult experiences. She lost her father. He committed suicide, for example. And yeah, she has a hearing loss and had to deal with constantly losing abilities, which is also such difficult experience to go through loss that intense, through loss of abilities. And this little 11-year-old is sitting there in front of me and talking sometimes like a very wise old woman. So I ask myself, is it a matter of age or is it a matter of experiences?
Yeah, it's almost like age is a factor, because the more age, the more
Yeah,
experience.
certainly. But
If you have a lot of experience then it's like a fast track to maturity, isn't it?
And she said to me today, and I always had, Anna, I'm so glad I always had therapy, because we know each other since she was a baby. And she started being in therapy at the age of 4. So she always had therapy and always had the possibility to be guided through all these experiences. And that's also what she mentioned. There was always someone there to talk about the experiences. So, yeah.
I mean, I suppose it's possible you could have, I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm like, could you have a lot of experiences, but I'm bringing another factor in here. You could have a lot of intense experiences, but you might not use them well, or you might not have where to grow with them. That's a big factor too, isn't it?
That's a big factor.
Yeah. So you've got time as a factor in this equation. You've got experience, massive factor, and then ability to, or enough awareness or sensitivity or strength to process and experience into maturity. Yeah.
Because someone could, in a year or two, if they make really good use of those experiences, they could mature more than someone who took 20 years but didn't make good use of those experiences. There's some time required, but it's not purely a factor of time.
We got it down to an equation here.
I think we do.
So, Jez, you're basically talking about pre-shift maturity, correct? I mean, is there an element of maturity that comes after the shift that you could also relate to us?
Very interesting question. Yeah. Yeah, I think there is. Yeah. I don't think it ever stops. But if I think about when I, soon after the shift and where I'm now, I've learned so much from like doing this even and talking to people about it. I've learned so much. So that's a kind of maturity, I guess. Yeah. So it's in that area. I probably got better at speaking about it, and the thing itself deepens. Yeah. So yeah, maturity, but the pre-shift maturity, is probably around, in the way we're talking about, it's what paves the way for the shift. Because if you're not mature, I don't think the shift can happen. Even if you have really big openings, because it can't be used by life to kind of finish the job, to take you to that permanent outside of identification thing. Like I all think of you as mature, and that's why you're here, and that's why, because you use this in a way that's mature, and that's what's carrying you forward. Yeah.
Is maturity also something which is aligned to taking in responsibility? Because that's something which I notice in my beingness, that taking in responsibility for myself, for others, is something very intense and increased the last years. There's a different taste in how I deal with life concerning this.
Yeah.
Is this part of maturity from your point of view?
Taking responsibility, I would lump it with like awareness. Like you're aware of, basically, let's put it as plainly as this, you're aware of your personality, of your patterns. And when you become aware of it, you take responsibility for it. So instead of dumping your shit on someone else, or even if it arises, you will know, oh yeah, that's my stuff. Yeah, I know this. So definitely part of it. So that's in the equation too, but under the umbrella of awareness and self-awareness, I think.
Is maturity identical with more and more disidentifying with the personality, or is it something more than that or different than that?
Such brilliant questions. Just sit with that for a moment. So is maturity to do with the level of disidentification from personality?
Is it equal to that, or is it, Lord, could you be like you've disidentified, there's no change in your disidentification personality, but there's still something called maturity that's distinct from that?
Yeah, I suppose we've got two different things which are related. There's maturity and then there's spiritual maturity. So one is just, you know, an old man has lived a lot of experiences and he's got a kind of maturity of life experience. But I suppose that may not translate to what Anna's just said, self-awareness, taking responsibility. I don't think necessarily that's the same. So we're talking about, you know, it's a weird phrase, but spiritual maturity, meaning the ability to use spiritual meaning beyond personality here, the ability to use that. So it's very much to do with awareness and self-awareness. And therefore, when we're talking about that kind of maturity, it is very much linked with identification, because, you know, as the identification with personality lessens, and that kind of maturity surely is, yeah, growing.
I got to know a quite famous author on Saturday. He was doing a reading, and my band was doing some music, and he also he made a speech, a really wise man concerning how the intellectual stuff, I would say, and also what humanity, for example, you notice he knows a lot, and you also feel his heart. But afterwards, when we were sitting together, there also was a very big personality showing how clever he is, showing how much he knows, telling stories, really silly stories. Some of them were jokes where I thought, why are you talking like this? Before you did this great speech about humanity, and afterwards it was like there was a break in between, and it was really so obvious that he isn't aware of his personality at all. And that was so contradictory then. So there is a maturity in being wise, having done a lot of work around thinking about what does humanity mean, but that was so strange for me, and I think that was
exactly what we've
that was exactly the difference between he's very mature, I would say, but he isn't spiritually mature.
Yeah, I mean, you can often come across people, you know, on YouTube who are like really clever and really knowledgeable about certain subjects. You know, that's highly regarded in the world, and people look up to that. But here we look up to, if we look up to anything, is how identify with your personality. That's the goal. All the rest, however clever you are, is secondary. Yeah,
he was talking compassion, but I don't know if he really is compassionate.
Yeah, you can know about compassion and talk well about it without being it, because being it really involves, well, self-awareness, doesn't it? And this kind of maturity we're talking about. An opening is an opening, and it's like gold, and there's no you know, that is the same. That's opening to the absolute. If it's a real opening, that's the same. Whoever has it, whatever age, that's it, you know. But it's like, what happens next? That's the real point, you know. That's where what do you do with it? You know, how ready and mature is the system to receive it and transform the relative side, which is the personality? Yeah.